And the thinking was that it happened quite suddenly, that dinosaurs were superior, that there was something about them, that once they originated, they had such a advanced biology and advanced type of body that they spread all around the world, that they spread around almost like an infectious virus, that they outcompeted the other animals of the day way back in the Triassic period, the days of the supercontinent Pangaea. But we now know that's not the case. There have been so many new fossil discoveries over the last decade or so, fossils of the very first dinosaurs, the animals living with the first dinosaurs.
If you're, as a patient, approaching the clinic, you're visiting with your doctor, you've had, a specific set of lab tests, and you're wondering, do you have a particular diagnosis or not? Are you going to respond to a drug in a poorly or not, or is this going to be have a secondary effect because of some other comorbidity you have? Now, what's possible is that you can look at data from millions of patients who came before you and watch what happened to them over time in response to similar therapies that were given, or to observe what was done to them and how they reacted, to figure out exactly what is the right thing to do for you.
People were so afraid of using federal funds to sponsor the kind of research that a certain subset of the population would find objectionable. The government basically abrogated all responsibility in IVF research. They basically said, we're not going to use federal funds to support any research involving human embryos and fetuses. So what resulted from that was that IVF still continued to be investigated, but it became kind of a cowboy science. It was something that was funded by private people who were funding, just sort of the marketplace of fertility clinics, and there was no regulation. If there had been federal funds for research grants, then there would have been certain restrictions on federal funding, and also would have been an opportunity for the scientists to actually talk to each other. When people get NIH grants, they often have conferences and they have, some sort of public forum in which they describe some of the things they've been learning. But this put everything sort of under the radar and back into the private marketplace, which was not necessarily good for this kind of research.
Today, we are seeing hundreds of years of scientific discovery being challenged by people who simply disregard facts that don't happen to agree with their agenda. Some call it pseudoscience, others call it faith-based science. But when you notice where this negligence tends to take place, you might as well call it political science. You can see political science at work when it comes to global warming. Despite near unanimity in the science community, there is now a movement driven by ideology and short-term economics to ignore the evidence and discredit the reality of climatic change. You can see political science at work with respect to stem cell research. Despite its potential, the federal government has restricted funding for creating new cell lines, putting the burden of any future research squarely on the shoulders of the private sector. Now government's most basic responsibility is the health and welfare of its people. So it has a duty to encourage appropriate scientific investigations that could possibly save the lives of millions.
I think imagination deserves to come back to the forefront of research and concern in psychology and philosophy, and I would say even in neuroscience. It fell out of the picture because of the rise of behaviorism. The mind sort of fell out of the picture because we thought, well, we can only study behaviors of animals and humans, and we can't know what's happening in the mind. So it disappeared. But then when the mind came back during the cognitive revolution, it came back on the model of a computer. So computational mind, of course, very popular and did great things. I mean, thinking of the mind that way has been productive.
Chemists there have developed a battery that runs on sugar, from soft drinks to tree sap. Living things have been using sugar for fuel for over 1 billion years. Now scientists have taken a tip from biology and engineered batteries that contain enzymes that convert sugar into electricity. The researchers used their battery, which was about the size of a postage stamp, to run a handheld calculator, and they powered the thing using sweetened drink mixes, tree sap, even plain old sugar water. Soda works too, but it has to be flat because carbonation doesn't help. In addition to providing juice for cell phones, MP3 players, and of course, calculators, sugar batteries could allow soldiers to charge their electronics on the battlefield, a possibility that interested the Defense Department enough to fund the studies. it's safe to say that most of us often feel crunched for time. So much so that we're experiencing what Ashley Whillans of the Harvard Business School, the lead author of the study, describes as a time famine. And like any famine, this chronic lack of time takes its toll on our health. Well, if time is money, Whillans and her team wondered whether money that's used to buy time could offer some relief, like paying someone else to clean the house, mow the lawn, or deliver the groceries. To find out, the researchers asked more than 6,000 people from the US, Canada, Denmark, and the Netherlands to rate their overall satisfaction with life, and to estimate how much money they lay out each month to outsource unenjoyable daily tasks or otherwise purchase some time off. And they found that respondents who willingly swap funds for free time also report feeling more content, regardless of their income or how many hours they work each week.
But snakebites are still a big concern for much of the world's population. The World Health Organization estimates that about 100,000 people die from poisonous snake bites each year. Many more people become paralyzed or permanently disabled. And in poor rural areas of Asia, Africa, and South America, most deaths from snake bites go unreported. Most victims live too far from clinics that could provide them with antivenom. In Nepal, where more than 10% of bite victims die, an experimental program uses volunteer motorcyclists to save residents. Since the program launched in 2003, only about 0.5% of victims who got a ride died. Researchers are also hard at work developing better tests to detect whether victims have been bitten by a poisonous snake, and in some cases, even detect the species.
These crafty caterpillars trick ants into feeding them by mimicking the sound of their queen. Ants are social creatures whose colonies contain a queen ant and hordes of worker ants who feed the queen and take care of all her young. Blue butterfly caterpillars have come up with clever ways to exploit that system. These parasitic caterpillars take up residence in the nests of red ants, and they mooch free meals in part by waggling their heads to beg for food like all the other ant grubs. But that's not all. Scientists using sophisticated recording equipment were able to listen to the caterpillars chatter, and found that the interlopers imitated the sounds of an adult queen.
Hi, everybody. This weekend, we'll dedicate the newest American icon on our National Mall, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It's a beautiful building, 5 stories high and some 70 feet below the ground, situated just across the street from the Washington Monument. And this museum tells a story of America that hasn't always taken a front seat in our national narrative. As a people, we've rightfully passed on the tales of the giants who built this country, but too often, willful or not, we've chosen to gloss over or ignore entirely the experience of millions upon millions of others. But this museum chooses to tell a fuller story. It doesn't gauze up some bygone era or avoid uncomfortable truths. Rather, it embraces the patriotic recognition that America is a constant work in progress, that each successive generation can look upon our imperfections and decide that it is within our collective power to align this nation with the high ideals of our founding.
For centuries, astronomers have watched the storm spin across the giant world's face. But for planetary scientists, Jupiter's most distinctive mystery may be what's called the energy crisis of its upper atmosphere. How do temperatures average about as warm as Earth's, even though the enormous planet is more than 5 times further away from the Sun? All the Sun's giant planets display this energy crisis, and those in chilly orbits around other stars probably have it too.
The Earth is a hotter place, and it's caused by the buildup of greenhouse gases like carbon monoxide and methane. Like the glass on a greenhouse, these gases let in the sun's heat, but they stop it from getting out, so the surface of the Earth slowly becomes warmer. These gases have always existed naturally in the Earth's atmosphere, but now we're burning more and more fossil fuels. We're using more oil and coal, and wood too, as we cut down more trees. The Philippines' financial position is described as depressing. That's a very big cause of concern. The value of their currency, the peso, has hit an all-time low against the American dollar, one of the world's strongest currencies. It means the peso has never been worth so little. On the markets, it's hit an all-time low. And it's not just the currency. Serious concern about the country's financial and political future means its credit rating has been downgraded or reduced. That sends a signal to the financial community that the Philippines is an unsafe place to do business. You could lose your money if you invest, if you put your money into stocks and shares there.
One manifestation of globalization is the spread of similar products around the world. These include well-known brands such as Coca-Cola and Nike, and with a slogan, "One World, One Taste," the American fast food chain McDonald's. There are 30,000 restaurants in more than 120 countries, and McDonald's has become a symbol of the American way of life. But it seems that food tastes in the United States may be beginning to change. Research shows that people are eating fewer burgers and hot dogs and trying to eat healthier food. Safe water can become contaminated as a result of poor sanitation or the chemical fertilizers used in agriculture. So how is it possible to ensure that people everywhere have access to the water they need? Well, one answer is to build dams. But of course, dams don't provide a straightforward solution. They may supply energy and fresh water to those who live nearby, but there's often a price to pay. In some cases, millions of people are forced to leave their homes before the area is flooded. In other cases, the people who live downstream may suddenly find themselves without the water they once enjoyed. When we bear in mind factors like these, we begin to understand how water issues can lead to political disagreement and other tensions.